Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to be talking about the series that I started, continued, finished and DNF'd last year, and then there'll also be a follow-up video coming soon with my priority series for 2024, so call it a series about series. I was meant to film these videos in January but life had other plans, so we're doing it now. I'm actually going to start with the series that I DNF'd because I want to get them out of the way. First on the list is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco, which I read back in October. I did a whole vlog reading books about witches and I read this first book. I do own the second book on my Kindle, but I don't think I like Kerri Maniscalco's writing. This was the first book that I'd read from her. It didn't work for me. The synopsis was really interesting. It was following this girl whose sister dies and she summons a prince from hell to investigate. There's also other witches going missing. It's really difficult to explain because I could not understand or grasp what the point of this book was. Like, it was really confusing. I had to Google the ending because I didn't really understand what had happened. It's ironic because the main character also didn't seem to have a clue about anything. She was acting really recklessly and getting herself into these really dangerous situations that she'd conveniently find herself getting out of like really easily, and it was just really frustrating to read. So I'm probably not going to continue this. Like I said, I do have the second book and I have heard that the second book is more new adult, whereas Kingdom of the Wicked is firmly YA. But yeah, if I don't like the writing of an author, then I don't think I should try other books by them, especially within the same series. Next up we have another YA fantasy romance series, and that is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. So I read the first two books and I actually really liked the first book. I thought it was a really fun romance between a witch and a witch hunter. It had forced proximity and the banter was really entertaining. Some of the world building was a little bit sloppy, but I was genuinely excited to go into book two, even though I hadn't heard the best things and I should have listened to the reviews because book two felt completely pointless. Apparently this was meant to be a duology initially and it was extended into a trilogy, and you can tell because nothing happened in the second book until like the last 100 pages. But by that point I was so annoyed that I'd wasted my time on this book that I don't even care how the series wraps up. The final series that I DNF'd last year was the Scarlet Revolution series, I think it's called, by Genevieve Cogman. I could just check the inside cover, but yeah, this is the Scarlet Revolution trilogy. The first book is called Scarlet. I got this through the Goldsborough Sci-Fi Fantasy subscription before I cancelled my subscription, and I gave this a good go. I finished the book. It sounded kind of interesting because it's set during the French Revolution, but in like an alternative history where there's vampires. So it did interest me initially and I liked the beginning and the setup. Basically the main character joins the resistance of people who are trying to get people, especially vampires, out of France. I'm not really familiar with the story of the Scarlet Pimpernel, so I guess maybe some of this went over my head, but the main character really annoyed me. I found her more frustrating the further that I got into the book, and there was also a romance that felt really forced. So yeah, I got to the end and I thought I don't really care how this continues. Next up we have some books that are part of series that are still ongoing, but I am now up to date, so I hope that made sense. I'm questioning now how I phrased that. But first up we have the Alex Stern series by Leigh Bardugo. I read Hellbent last year and I think there's going to be one more book in this series. I did consider whether to DNF this series because even though I loved Ninth House, I did not like Hellbent. It was one of my most disappointing books of last year, and I think the tone of this story is just going in a direction that doesn't really work for me. The first book, Ninth ninth house introduces us to our main character Alex Stern, and it was very dark and there were all of these secret societies. It's set at Yale, but there's like magic and stuff, and it was also a murder mystery, which is something that I really enjoy. There were loads of twists and turns that I really appreciated, but once I got into Hellbent, I started to notice certain things that I didn't really like. I can't remember who it was that described this as being like Buffy, which is a TV show that I really enjoy, but I don't like it in book format. The characters go through a lot of trauma and it felt like they weren't really reacting to stuff that was happening in a way that I found satisfying. There were also a lot of conveniences and there were developments to the world that felt really random and out of place. So yeah, I am interested, I think, in finishing this series just because I did really like Ninth House, and I do really respect Leigh Bardugo as an author because she is the author that got me back into reading fantasy, so I feel like I should give the final book a good go. But yeah, this was disappointing, unfortunately. I've already ranted about it, so I'm not going to say any more. I am up to date on the series and I am anticipating the final book, even though I'm scared. Another book that I was highly anticipating last year was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. Thankfully, this was a 5 stars. Really enjoyed this, even though it was a very different tone to the David trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. I really liked the main character in this. It follows our main character Amina, who is a retired pirate. However, she's offered a lot of money to come out of retirement and get the band back together and do one last quest. This was so much fun. I really liked the characters in this, especially one character in particular. Really excited to see what direction this series goes in, because with the David trilogy, I liked The City of Brass, but I loved the second and third book, so I'm hoping for a similar story with this series. The final series that I started last year that I do plan on continuing is the Dragon Scales trilogy, I think is what it's called, by LR Lam, the first book being Dragonfall. This doesn't have the best average rating on Goodreads. I think it has like a 3.5 average rating, and I can kind of understand why, because it is very slow. It takes quite a while to get into the story because the first half, I think, is dedicated to world building and there's a lot of info dumping, but I think you need those info dumps to understand this world, and it's a really interesting world. I always appreciate fantasy that does something a bit different, and I thought this was really unique. So in this world, there used to be dragons that lived alongside humans. However, humans betrayed dragons, stole their magic and banished them to this like parallel world. We're following a few different characters, including a thief who's human and the last male dragon who finds himself in the human world and is trying to get revenge, but there's like an enemies to lovers type story. There's also a kind of heist plot. There's a lot of different elements to this book, and I think it was a little bit disjointed at times, but I'm really interested to see what direction it goes in next because I really liked LR Lam's writing. There's a few different writing styles actually that are used in this. You have second person POV, first person POV, and I think also third person POV. So yeah, it took a little while to get used to that. I did enjoy this one overall, and I think I gave it 4.5 stars. So in this final section, I'm going to be talking about the series that I finished last year, starting with the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, which is part of the First Law universe. However, I am going to count this trilogy as a completed series because it completes the first arc of the story, even though there's still more books that come after it, and I still need to read 2 of the standalones, the short story collection and the Age of Madness trilogy to finish the First Law universe as a whole. But this trilogy in particular I did like. I think I gave it 4 stars. I made a whole spoiler-free reading vlog if you want to check that out. I'll leave it linked in the cards and in the description. The main issue that I had with this series series is that there's no map. I think there are maps that you can look up online, but I really struggled to keep track of where characters were and where they were from and where they were going. Some parts were a little bit confusing and some parts were also very slow because it is so character driven. What I did like was the ending, and apparently some people don't like the ending to this trilogy. I found it really satisfying in an unsatisfying way. Glockta as well is one of my favourite fictional characters ever. I thought that his character in particular was written really well, and yeah, I do want to get back to this series, but I feel like it's one that I have to be in the right mood for to enjoy it. I also last year read 2 Robin Hobb series within the Realm of the Eldlings. So I read The Tawny Man towards the start of the year, and then I also read the Rainwild Chronicles towards the end of the year. So I'm really glad that I read both of these because I am so invested in the Realm of the Eldlings now. I'm actually currently halfway through book 14, which I think is Fool's Assassin. A lot of these books have similar names, so I get them confused, but I'm halfway through that and already I am loving it. Glad that I stuck with the Realm of the Eldlings because I wasn't sure about going back to the Fitz books after not enjoying the Farseer trilogy. I do much prefer the books that are set within this part of the world that covers Bingtown and the Rainwilds. I am really enjoying the Fitz and the Fool trilogy so far, so it was worth the investment even though these books are really chunky. Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko was another series that I read last year. This is a YA fantasy duology that has really rich world building. I really liked the world in this. It follows a main character who is sent by her mother to the capital to infiltrate the prince's council, and the intention is that she's going to kill the prince. She has a curse put on her, so she has no choice in the matter. It was very plot driven, but actually I think I prefer YA fantasy that is more plot driven because I don't often connect with the characters because I'm not the intended audience and I'm a lot older than the characters, but I really enjoyed the plot in this. It went in a few directions that I wasn't expecting, and I would recommend it if you like YA fantasy or you're interested in picking up a YA fantasy because it did feel like YA, but not in a bad way because that's the intention. The Broken Earth trilogy by NK Jemison I also read last year, and this quickly became one of my all-time favourite series. I've already talked about this book in my best books of the year video, so I won't ramble about it too much, but I loved this series and I really appreciated the way that NK Jemison approached the different themes within this series. It's set in a world that is very unstable. This planet has frequent earthquakes and volcanic activity, and the people are used to having to deal with that. One of the opening lines to this story is, "This is the way the world ends for the last time," and it just gave me goosebumps. This is essentially about these characters trying to survive through this most recent, latest apocalypse, which could destroy the earth altogether. It was so unique and so unlike anything that I've ever read before. It's not plot driven and it's not character driven, even though there is a plot running through the series and the characters are interesting, or I found them interesting. It is a book that I appreciated most for the themes and the world building. So if that sounds like something that you would also enjoy, then I would really recommend this. It is very dark though. There are many trigger warnings and content warnings for this series, so I would recommend looking those up if you are interested in picking this up. The final series that I finished right at the end of 2023 was the Drowning Empire trilogy by Andrea Stewart, the first book being The Bone Shard Daughter. I really enjoyed the first book in this trilogy. I gave it 4 stars because I really liked the world. I thought the magic system was really interesting and well developed, and it has the animal companion trope, which I adore, and I did genuinely like the characters. However, the second book I struggled with a little. It got more political, which I did appreciate. However, there was a romance which to me felt really forced. So I went into the Bone Shard War. Camera battery just ran out, so apologies if the angle has changed, but I went into this with lower expectations because I heard mixed reviews around the time that it came out. out, and it had also been 2 years since I'd read book 2. This was so slow in the beginning, and one thing I liked about the first 2 books was the pacing was really consistent. However, there was a large chunk at the beginning that to me felt kind of pointless. There was some interesting reveals which I really liked because it felt like we were coming full circle, and I liked the ending. I liked where we left off, but yeah, I feel like this focused on aspects that I was just not as interested in. I think this focused too much on side characters that I didn't really care about and that I could barely even remember from the first 2 books. So yeah, my overall ratings went 4 stars for the first book, 3.5 for the second, and then 3 stars for the final book. Glad that I finished it though. That does bring me to the end of this video, so thank you for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments what series you read last year, and if you've read any of the series that I've talked about in this video. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye!